Okay, welcome. Thank you for coming today. And this workshop is on getting started with your ArcGIS school bundle and organization. I'm Ina Ahern. I teach at Plymouth Regional High School. Bob?
I'm Bob Woolner. I teach 7th grade geography at Hopkinton Middle High School in Kentucook.
Rebecca and Shane?
I'm Rebecca Lilia. I'm a GIS specialist with the U.S. Forest Service.
And I'm Shane Bra. I work at University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension.
Great. And underneath that on the title page here, you see a bit.ly, which I believe Rebecca is going to post into the chat, so you can click on that link. And that will take you to this slideshow. So you're welcome to, if you want to, make a copy of that to put in your own Google Drive, or have that for the future for reference, because there's a lot of information we are going to cover in this presentation. And as the little note says up in the corner, this is normally a 3-day in-person workshop for us. And we're going to try and do 3 days in 1 hour over Zoom. We'll see how we make out with that. So here's sort of our planned outline for the day. We're going to start and talk about what an ArcGIS online school bundle was and how to get one. Some basic vocabulary in dealing with organizations and accounts. Personally identifiable information, focusing on the New Hampshire data privacy and how you can use ArcGIS online. Some basic first steps on setting up your organization. If we have time, we'll talk about creating teacher and student accounts. There's no way we're getting to number 6 on how to use your ArcGIS online organization, and that's too bad. It's where the fun really begins, but again, there's only so much time in an hour. And then I would like to make sure people are aware of number 7. This is what my kids struggle with the most. We are a Google school. My kids expect saving to happen automatically. My kids expect 2 or 3 of them to be able to work on the same thing at the same time. And although that may work fine in Google, it does not work well in ArcGIS Online. So you need to remind your kids to save early and save often, and only one person should be changing something at a time. Again, because we're trying to do this all in 1 hour, we will provide you with a list of additional resources that you can look at. And don't forget, we have the GIS office hours available, and we can be there to help you with that as well if you have specific things in terms of setting up your organization in the future. Okay, so I think most of you have already taken care of this. You've gone to the webpage, you've seen whether your school has an organization. This is a map from that web page. What you ended up getting when you got an organization. Well, you got this organization that allows you to make maps, to create apps, to do story maps. You also got the ability to do some field data work with Survey 123 and field maps. You got ArcGIS Insights, which is an incredible analysis software online. You also got a desktop software called ArcGIS Pro, and access to a whole bunch of learning resources because you have an organization. I am a person who, when I go to teach something, I want to know everything about it before I start teaching. I spend hours and hours doing prep, and I really want to know how to do everything before I start. Well, that doesn't work very well with ArcGIS Online. I've been doing GIS since 1999. I've been doing online ever since it came out. And I think I probably know maybe 0.25% of how to use this and what it can do. It's that incredibly rich, incredibly powerful. And yet my kids can still do some pretty cool stuff with it. So really important. Don't think you have to be an expert to start using this. What is ArcGIS Online? Well, if you talk to your tech people, it's SaaS, software as a service, software as a service. And basically, it's a piece of software that can be used on any device with an internet connection. So for those of you that have Chromebooks, schools that have Chromebooks, it works fine on Chromebooks. You can access ArcGIS Online in 3 different ways. And the best way, and what we're recommending for you, is that you have an account within an ArcGIS Online organization, because the organization allows you to work together for you as an administrator to see what your students are doing, to control what your students share in terms of the maps and apps and who they share it with. Share it just with their classmates, share it with your entire school organization, or perhaps there may be some things that you would choose to allow them to share publicly. Okay, so what is this organization? Esri's definition, which I thought was kind of interesting, was it's a customized view of the website. Again, you have that software, the map viewer, which has 2 formats now, the classic viewer, which I'm still using, and a new viewer, which allows you to make some really cool maps, but I don't think you can do the analysis yet in the map viewer that you can do in classic. All those other things we talked about. Well, an ArcGIS Online organization also consists of the people, and the people come into the organization in the form of these user accounts. The org also consists of the stuff you put in it. You can put data in it. Obviously, you can make maps and apps. You can also upload lesson materials into your organization to make it easy for others to access it. You can create hubs, which are like fully functioning websites. The ArcGIS Online organization, again, provides these amazing resources, allows you to access resources that others have shared, allows you to control what happens. And again, for a professional cost, about $5,800 per user per year. But Esri really wants to support K through 12 education. And so they provide this to us basically in an unlimited format for free, which is really, really amazing. Now, while we're talking about administrative control, unless you are the tech admin for your building, you probably are not an administrator on your school network. But you can and probably should be an administrator within your ArcGIS Online organization. When you start to work with your technology people, you want them to be involved and aware of what you're doing and be supportive. But if they're concerned about this creating a lot more work for them, you can certainly assure them that you can carry most of the load and do most of the administration stuff. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about creating student accounts and privacy.
Can I pop in and add something about that?
Absolutely, Bob.
Yep. And in terms of the administrator, we are suggesting that you would be the primary administrator of that school organization that you'll be creating. And as Ina said, don't let the IT person expect, or don't let them come to expect that they'd be needing to do much work. But there's one other administrator role that you ought to also consider, and that is to get someone else to be an administrator. We will discuss that again later, but someone else who has the keys to the castle. Someone else can get in as need be. Okay?
Great.
We'll cover that again.
All right, so I know some of you here are not from New Hampshire, but most of you are. And in New Hampshire, we have some fairly strict student data privacy laws. And the law is provided right there if you want to go and read it. There is the Student Data Privacy Alliance that New Hampshire is a member of. And they have a model New Hampshire agreement that they ask all technology vendors to sign to be approved. And then this alliance maintains a list of software that's used, the agreements, the vendor responses to requests, and it can be searched by resource or district. And in February, when we were originally supposed to have this workshop, all that information was open. Well, I found out on Tuesday night at the NIST meeting that website access has changed. You can still get there. You can see the agreements that have been signed by the vendors for specific districts that are members of the alliance. But if they're not a member of the alliance, you can't see it. You also can't see the other information about other organizations that were approached and how they responded. So again, in February, I got this quote which talked about Esri. Esri's the company that makes the ArcGIS software. They were approached about signing that agreement and they declined. So you can see their response there. They're not looking to collect personally identifiable information, but they don't want to be responsible if you put personally identifiable information into their system about students. So, and they also don't feel that they can, I mean, they're giving this software to us for free. They don't feel they can afford to have a lawyer deal with each state's or each district's agreement and do this signing. So we're going to talk about how you can meet New Hampshire student data privacy requirements and still work with Esri software, even though they have not signed the agreement. Ultimately, it's going to come down, you're going to need to talk to your IT staff and determine what they will allow you to do so that you meet your school's expectations. And I will share what my district does, and I will share, and Bob will share what his district does, and we will talk about that. Okay. So before we talk though, let me talk about some options. So one thing is there's a lot you can do without even having the students sign in. They can view story maps created by others, and there is an incredible rich resource of story maps created by others. And I'm going to escape out of my slideshow for a minute because I already opened these. Let's see. So here's that link to the story maps. I mean, just looking at what's available here, there's an incredible amount of resources. And these are just the ones they've highlighted. You can go to gallery and get a lot more. There's a lot there that your kids can get out of using this. There are geo inquiries, which are lessons specially designed for schools, and they're by categories. And you can see the categories here. And although some of these, there's usually some parts of them that require you to sign in, each of the lessons has a portion that you can do without signing in. And so that's a resource that you can use. Also, this Teach with GIS Hub has some resources that you can use that talks about it. And again, links to different tools. And a lot of those, not all, but a lot of those can be used without signing in. But there are limits when you don't sign in. With no sign in, you can't save work. You can't really make story maps or convert maps into user-friendly apps. But, and this is something that we were talking about just before this, is there's very different restrictions for students and for teachers. So even if your school is adamant that your students can't use ArcGIS online, you certainly can do it and share those products with the students. So there's some things, if your administration comes down and says, absolutely no way, we can't use this. Another option is to create generic student sign-ins. So you have student 1, student 2, student 3 within your class, and this year student 1 belongs to Sally Smith and student 2 belongs to George Jones, and then the next year student 1 is Lisa Frank and student 2 is somebody else, and you can just keep reusing those accounts from year to year, and you can set it so that the information can't be shared, okay? The other thing you can do is you can do account names that belong to the student but don't share personally protected information. So student 1 or student 23AA is the student who's going to graduate in 2023, and they're the first student, and student 23AB is the next student. And then another option, and this one would require, again, you're working with the tech department, is what's called single sign-on. So in single sign-on, when the student signs into their Google domain or whatever domain they use, certain information that doesn't include that privacy, that their name that they probably sign into with Google, gets passed on to Esri, but it's always linked. So Google sees Sally Smith, Esri sees student 4. And that can be set up by your tech admin, and again, means that no data goes out to Esri that is personally protected, personally identifiable information. Okay, so the first step in deciding on your organization is to decide on how big your organization is going to be. Is it going to be your elementary school, your high school, your entire district, your entire SAU? There are advantages and disadvantages of each choice. Obviously, a school tends to be smaller. You're going to have fewer members in your organization. If you're the one administering it, a lot easier to just be administering it for your school as opposed to doing it for your SAU. However, there are also some disadvantages. Bob, do you want to speak about that? Because you have kids
Sure.
that go from schools to...
Yeah, we're in SAU 66. I teach in the Hopkinton Middle High School. When we first set up our organization, we did HMHS, Hopkinton Middle High School. And they are able to use their work beginning in 7th grade all the way up through the high school. That high school class can use the same log on, the same sign in. There's a continuity to it. However, I did not consider 6th grade when I set up HMHS. If the 6th grade teachers wanted to start to use the work, it would be a little trickier to manage that. They might need a separate account, a separate organization, Maple Street School organization. Or what perhaps I should have done was created that SAU 66 account originally. I did not. I'm content with what we've done. I think that as long as you are sort of looking forward, looking ahead to where students will go, is give that more thought than what if it gets pushed down to some earlier grades. Still, that's the consideration. Is it the school? Is it the district? Is it an SAU? What about feeder schools? Do any of you have feeder schools coming in? Their work doesn't necessarily travel with them.
And that's our situation. Plymouth Regional High School has, I think it's 7 different feeder schools. And several of those schools have ArcGIS online organizations. But again, the sign-on for the students there is different than the sign-on here. Their work doesn't transfer when they come to the high school. So once you have decided on,
Ina, can I
Yes.
jump in for a moment? Something occurs to me also. I also help our school administer their digital portfolio, their information communication technology portfolio. So student access to their work is really important for once that's assembled. But that ends in 8th grade. But they could use work from 6th grade. So there is that consideration that the work should somehow remain accessible for a couple of years. Ina, you had mentioned earlier about student 1, student 2, and then starting over. Well, that would remove some of their work from their portfolio if that's what you're doing.
absolutely.
But this is also worth noting, as long as you haven't eliminated that account from the earlier school, from the feeder school, their work is still accessible if they log on as that account, as long as that's still active. So they can have multiple logons for different accounts. I, for instance, am a member of Ina's school account. You know, I don't go in, but I do have some work there.
And it's been very helpful to have that when we've been working on things. So that's something else we will talk about. Absolutely. Rebecca and Shane and Judy also are members of my high school account. And in fact, they are all administrators of my high school account. Okay, so once you have decided on the size of your organization, the next thing is you have to find your short name. And I'm actually down on number 3, and then we'll go back and do number 2. It was very easy when Bob and I started to get short names because there were lots of them available. It has become trickier, but you want your short name to be, as it says, short, because it's probably going to be part of everybody's username. You'd like it to be something that's representative of your organization. For example, if you look up at mine, it's PRHS, Plymouth Regional High School. Bob's is HMHS, Hopkinton Middle High School. Our state organization, New Hampshire ArcGIS. Okay, so you want something that's there. You do want to be careful of things that might be offensive to people. We learned from one of the Bo teachers early on that you want to keep it free from tablet unfriendly symbols, because you may have to be typing this and entering this in a phone or a tablet. So avoid capitals, avoid lots of switching back and forth between numbers and letters. Keep it tablet friendly. Hyphens are okay, but again, not as tablet friendly as PRHS or SAU 66. The next step is you got to figure out if your short name is available or if somebody has already taken it. And again, I'm going to pop out of this because I have already opened these in tabs just to save things. So let's take a look at what happens. So first going to see my organization homepage. Then you're going to see Bob's organization homepage, our state one. And then this is Holderness Central School. This is one of the feeder schools in my district. And then this one, which is one that does not exist. So let me walk through what you'll see. So when you type that in for me, you see this, okay? I've uploaded a picture of the school and you have our little Bobcat emblem there. And notice you get an opportunity to sign in. Here's Bob's homepage. Our New Hampshire ArcGIS one is a little fancier. I think either Rebecca or Shane kind of updated our homepage. They made us update our homepages this year. And so they've put a little more information there. They've got a link to the hub. Oh, gee, a link to this workshop, the mapping hour. So you can put other information on your homepage. Okay. So after those three, the next one was Holderness Central School. And when you went to that site, this is what you see. So you see it identified as Holderness Central School, but you don't see anything else there until you log in. But this does tell me that the abbreviation HCS is taken. I couldn't decide to use that for my new organization that I was creating. Now this 1, 2, 3, 4 PRHS, I don't think anybody has an organization named that. So when you click on that link, what you get is this. It takes you to the ArcGIS Online main page. If you look up here at the URL, you'll see there's no organization name in it. That tells me that if I wanted to make an organization called 1, 2, 3, 4 PRHS, that short name is available. Okay. I would say that that was complicated enough that if there's questions on that, I should probably take questions on that right now. Okay, no questions. So when you are ready to create your organization, to start your organization, to click on that link in the email that you received from Esri, before you do that, you want to test to be sure that short name is available. So you take whatever you want to use and type it in .maps.arcgis.com. If it opens to a page that's been configured or that has that sign in, then that tells you that short name is not available. If it opens to what you saw when we looked at this 1, 2, 3, 4 PRHS, just the main ArcGIS Online page, you know your short name is good. And the reason why you have to do that is because you have to create your administrator account before you can set the short name. So, for example, my administrator account for the PRHS organization should be IAHERN_PRHS. Only now Esri is recommending that you not use the underline, but that you use a dot. So following their new recommendations, it would be IAHERN.PRHS. And when I set up my student accounts, because again, we can use student names. If you're using student names, it would be this way, .PRHS. So you tend to put the PRHS or whatever your short name is in the student names. That's helpful, or in everybody's names, in all the account names. That's helpful because for me, it's helpful because I know that I'm in my Plymouth Regional High School account, not in my New Hampshire ArcGIS account or my New Hampshire Watershed Education Program account. It also makes it clear what organization the account belongs to. If you are doing single sign-on, again, this may not get appended unless your domain admin, your IT people have set it to happen that way. But that's something, again, you want to consider and discuss with your IT staff. Okay, so again, as I was prepping for this workshop, I looked at the ArcGIS Learn site, and they do have a lesson on how to set up an ArcGIS Online organization. So once you have gone through that initial click on the email, this gives some information on how to configure your website. I didn't think you needed to share content right off the bat. You probably don't have any, so I would sort of skip that part of the lesson. I think this configuring additional site settings is important. Add members to the organization. definitely going to want to add some members to that, and we'll talk about that. You could go through the part of the lesson that talks about monitoring member activity. Get and license apps. Again, unless you have anybody who's using Pro, you probably don't need to do that right at the beginning. So you can either look at this Learn ArcGIS lesson and go through it as they suggest, or you can use it as a reference for setting up your organization. I thought it was pretty good in general for what information it had there. Yellow slides, we're not really going to have time to go through, so just really quick on this. There's the link to that. When you first start up, make sure you are not signed in to another ArcGIS online account. For example, I know some of you have New Hampshire EdGIS or New Hampshire WEP accounts. Don't be signed into them when you go in. So open a window, go to this page, make sure it says sign in. When you create, be sure you always create a new username. Never join your public account if you have one to the new organization, because you'll never get it back. Once it's joined, it's there. Esri has a slideshow that walks through this. It's called ArcGIS Online Organizations for Schools and Clubs. It's got some good information in it, and that is there. You have time to do that. Adding members. You can create members one at a time. You can also create members from a CSV file. I have created a CSV file that is linked there. It looks like this. You have a column for email, first name, last name, username. Notice I did their new pattern. Create a password, a user type. GIS Professional Advanced gives them access to everything since we have unlimited accounts. I think that's a good idea. Role, publisher, creator would be another option for user type, but you can make a copy of this and then edit it as you want. Now, if you notice, I put my name, Bob's name, Rebecca's, Shane's, and Judy's in here. And the reason I did that is, as Bob said earlier, we would really, really encourage you to add one or more of us as administrators in your organization. We mentioned, I know some of you I've helped recover passwords before. We have a change in teacher at a school. The administrator leaves, no one has access to it. I've been able to work with IT staff or new teachers in schools to get them access to that. One of my feeder elementary schools set up an organization and didn't make me a member of it. Well, we've lost that short name. No one can get into that organization anymore, and there's no way to recover that at this point. So again, please, when you set this up, would strongly encourage you to add one or more of us to it and let us know. And again, we don't go in there. We have access to lots of organizations. The only time we go in is if you ask us to help troubleshoot, or I've gone in to save some organizations that I didn't want the short name to get lost, and you had to have someone log in within the last year. So I went in and logged in a whole bunch of times just to get our organizations and make sure they weren't deleted.
I know we have a question about the password. Why would they all have the same password at the beginning?
Okay, so this is set up as the way I use it for my students. So when you set up the members, you have a choice of either sending them an email, in which case they then click on the link in the email and log in, or you can just add them automatically. So when I do this with my students and I have my kids sitting there in front of me, I go and I tell them, this is your username, and for this first login, your password is GIS is fun 1. And as soon as you log in, it makes them change their password. So you won't know their password after that.
Yeah, it's a one-time only.
Yep.
It does ask you to set up a profile question as well, which the students would do on their own. What is their favorite color? What is their, what city were they born in? Something like that. So that also gets set up at that point. One other thing about, did you notice how if you are creating that CSV and then adding Ina or myself or Rebecca or Shane or Judy or some combination, we are all coming in just as publishers. What you would need to do is, that's how you add the publisher, but then promote one of us to administrator. That allows us to get in to recover passwords as well.
Right. Right.
So
We
you
have to
can't
end
add
up,
administrator.
yep, we'd have to end up being an administrator to be able to help
Right.
you. All right. So this is that. Again, please consider adding us. You may want to create a showcase account. I'm rapidly running out of time, so I think I will hold that to talk about later, but those are some other accounts we've created. We got a whole bunch of yellow slides that we're not going to take time to talk through, groups, and then we're down to, here's a list of resources. And again, please note that final reminder, ArcGIS Online is not Google. Save early, save often. Two people can't work on the same map or app at the same time. If you have time after this, NIST, which is one of our sponsoring organizations, was talking about the fact they're looking for more responses for the Speak Up survey. You can go to this link and fill it out. There's going to be some questions you probably can't answer, but it's just looking to gather information about technology usage in New Hampshire. And there's some reports that are generated from that. So if you have time on that, that would be great. I am going to stop sharing and we'll take what we have for questions.